All right, KSK book review, Book of Job, Part 2. So, where we left off, I was about to get into it with his friends. Very key point of the book. So, at this point, uh, Satan's having his way with Job. He had a few rounds with him. He's already went back to Satan has already went back to God and said, "Hey, Job didn't curse you verbally, so God allowed Satan to do more stuff to Job, everything, and anything except killing him. So that's everything. So Satan's having a time with Job, with his body, his mind, his cattle, his family, everything. So much so that the wife has already told Job, "Hey, why don't you just, why don't you told his wife." The wife told Job, "Hey, why don't you just curse God and die?" This is how far it's gotten. So Job still hasn't said anything. Now, in comes Job's friends. So Job is going through all he's going through. His friends hear about what's going on. They come. Somehow they know Job's going through it, and they come to him. 3 of his friends come. Now, a lot of times when somebody is mourning, especially mourning like that, he lost a lot of land, cattle, family, kids, a lot of stuff he lost, and he's going through some stuff physically and obviously mentally and spiritually. So a lot of times when people are mourning, you'll just come and you'll just sit with someone and you'll wait until that person that's mourning is ready to talk. You don't just come there and just get to asking them a bunch of questions, how you feel, you just kind of just sit. And that's what they said that they did in the Bible. They came and they sat with him for 7 days. You just sit with a good friend of yours that's mourning. You just wait for them to be ready to talk. So they sat with him for 7 days. Eventually, Job speaks. But actually, I was gonna say too. That's what one of the things that's missing in today's society. I feel like a lot of people don't. They come to you, a lot of people, and they'll ask you a bunch of stuff and questions, and all that, and a lot of people may not be ready to talk. But that's like another good example of just coming to just sit with the mourner and just be there until they ready to speak. So anyway. So his friends get to eventually Job got to speaking. He started cursing the day he was born. He's upset with everything that's going on. He's pretty much going. He's not cursing God. He's not cursing God, but he's going into his rant as far as he wish he died, he wish he was never born, he wish he had to go through this, that. He's going into it for chapters, a few chapters. I don't know even how many chapters it was. I don't know, 8, something like that, chapters or more of him just going on a rant. So anyway, maybe a little less than that. But anyway, so his friends. Now keep in mind, this is a really important part of the story of Job. Now keep in mind, when somebody have their friends, these aren't just Job's friends. These are Job's really close friends. So by being his closest friends like that, they think like how Job thinks. Like if somebody else was going through, one of the other lessons I think that you could take out of this, if Job wasn't the person going through what he's going through, and he was like one of his friends, an outsider looking at somebody going through it, not being the person going through it, based on their understanding of God at that time and their understanding of their relationship with God at that time, that if somebody's going through bad things, they must have done something bad. So his friends pretty much kept saying that, first they didn't believe it, and it's like, "Well, Job, we know who you are," but eventually they started getting into it. Job, there's a lot of stuff. It got to be something you're doing, because God is a just God. I mean, they pretty much making a lot of excuses for what's going on with God. We know our God. He's just. He's this. He's that. Look at all the beautiful things He's done in the world. Everybody can see it. There's no way that He would allow something like this to happen, and you're good. It must be something you did wrong. So the whole time Job is defending his actions, he's saying, "No, I didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing I did wrong. Y'all can't. It's nothing you can tell me. I know what I did or did not do. I didn't do anything wrong." So anyway, all his friends go on a few more chapters of his friends explaining why this stuff must be happening to Job, what he may have did wrong, why God would have done this to him, why God had to have be punishing him for something. Job continues to defend himself, about it. He continues to defend himself. So, let me see. So at that point, his friends, Job is going into his defense, and his friends was making some really good points from their understanding, and let you know based on, if you really read and look at what their friends were saying, of their understanding of God. Looking at the trees, looking at the animals, the beauty, the sun, the moon, the stars, all of that. They go into all of these things. And Job constantly defends himself. Still hasn't cursed God, which is a good thing and a strong thing for Job to be going through, and it says a lot. I would even go as far as saying that it's only unconditional love is something, and in my lifetime, and then I haven't seen anything on this earth but two things that have unconditional love, and I've said this before too. Is there's only two things. One is a mother for her children. That's unconditional love. And the other is a man of God. And notice I didn't say a father, and I didn't say a woman of God. So, I'll continue. But anyway, so they're going a few rounds. So, but the key that I got out of it, and I think that other people would get out of it, is how his friends is viewing the situation. They keep viewing it as Job has to have done something wrong. He had to, because how in the world could all this stuff be happening and he hasn't? I mean, they are really pouring it in as far as defending God. Even in chapters like 30, 37, 36. They're explaining. They're really breaking it down to him. You all can read it for yourself. What else I want to mention? Something. And let's see. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. I'll because I throw it off, but let me say this, not to get to the end of it, but so Job eventually breaks out and he starts calling on God to come. He's like, God, come on, you got to explain this. You got to give me something. I'm going through all of this. God, where are you? You have to answer my questions. So eventually God appears. And he is, God asks, well, he breaks out, with Job immediately. And he said, like, where were you? Actually, let me go right to it. That was in, okay. So in 30, was it 38? Yeah. So then the Lord said unto Job in a whirl, he came in a whirlwind, and he said, I won't read that version. I want to read this version because I don't want to read get into all that. Is that 30? Yeah, that was like 38. Because there's a key point that I wanted to make in this. So yeah. So basically God is saying, who are you to question my wisdom with your ignorant, empty words? And then he goes into, what is that? 30. Oh, yeah, here we go. All right, so this is some. So 38:6. So this one he goes into something that's a key point where he goes into, it's a when he asks in Job like questions like, where were you who made the earth? Where were you? Do you know? He asked him just basic questions like, well, not basic, but questions as if to say like, where were you? You don't know anything. He asked him like, let me just read it out here because I don't want to paraphrase this part. So he's asking like, what holds up the pillars that support the earth? Who laid the cornerstones of the world? That's chapter 6, right? I mean, that's verse 6 in chapter 38. That's a lot of flat earthers use that verse a lot. And then even in verse number 7, when he says, in the dawn, no, let's go back to King James because I like the way that breaks down 38, 7, yeah. So in the King James version, it say, when the morning stars sang together and all of the sons of God shouted for joy. or who shout up in the sea with the doors. See, in just that in 6 and 7, a lot of occultists, Freemasons, and Christian use chapter 38, verse 6 and 7. When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. And he said that, and that's verse 7. I don't know why. Verse 7 after 6, when he was talking about laying the foundation of the earth. So that's when they talk about the ones. But anyway, not to get off the subject of Job, but that's when you get into a lot of occultists, Freemasons, and Christian stuff about the morning stars. Because of course Satan is looked at to be the morning star, and the sons of God, like who are the sons of God? Because obviously they were already there before humans were created. Of course, you're talking about angels, but that's another subject. So God is going into his rant, you know what I'm saying, as far as, where were you? Have you seen all the other creatures that I created? But something interesting that God was saying to Job while he was going through it, while he was explaining, or not explaining, let me correct that, not explaining, but going into the rant. He said, hey, have you seen these animals I created? And he went into these real big beasts that were strong, mighty. Nobody can do anything with them. Nobody can move them. And it was almost like he was explaining to him, like, these animals are so great and so strong that they don't need permission to do anything. They don't have to ask anybody's permission. Like, he actually even gave an example of when he was talking about one of the animals where, for sake of time, I'll just put it right there. He went into about the animal, like, can you can't pierce the skin of the animal. You can't break his bones. You can't put hooks, in the animal. So, like, you can't do anything with this animal. The animal is so mighty. The only person that can do something with it is God. And how I took that is that, in some ways, God was saying that might is right. Now, to go back into what the devil was saying about with Job, is that in order for you to get to a point for him to, when he was challenging God, and he said, hey, Job worships you, but he worships you basically because you bless him. Almost as if to say that Job loves God and he's a servant of God, but is he actually a servant of God based on the receivings? It's almost like as if, like, if you do something and you receive something, then you finally figure out the system, and then you get to the point to where you're like, okay, if I do this, if I do A, I'll get B. So you're not really serving God just to be serving God out of love. You're serving God to get a reward. So that's what Satan was actually challenging God with, and saying, that's what he was saying, like, Job is at a point where you've given him so much to where he's actually serving you to be rewarded. Not to say that he don't love you, he can still love you, but he's got at a point to where he's serving you in order to be rewarded. So, but anyway, I'm gonna get into the final thing when we go into the whole breakdown and the conclusion in 3. All right, y'all.